Guys, I wanted to record a little message for 2021, mostly because I found something really inspiring in a book that I thought would be wonderful to set as a theme for the upcoming year, given that 2020 put us all in the same and similar position that if we wanted to find an excuse for why we didn't hit our goals for 2020, that excuse is really easy to find. But there's a really important and wise message I picked up. I'm reading this book. It's called Debt. Debt by David Graeber. And it's a book about debt, and it has a really fascinating history of debt about it, history of conquest of nations and the IMF and things like that. And one of the lines in this book that I highlighted on the page because I needed to read it over and over again. It's so powerful and it's so thematic for the upcoming year, and it has such incredible practical implications that I just could not share it. And check this out. This is life changing. It says that if you tell people that they are inferior, they are unlikely to be pleased. But this surprisingly rarely leads to armed revolt. However, tell people that they are potential equals who have failed, and therefore what they have they don't deserve because it's not rightly theirs. And you are uh, more likely, much more likely, to inspire rage. And I'm reading this right out of the book, right? So again, I'm going to repeat this real quick. It's like if you tell somebody they're inferior because of who they are, they're going to be upset, but they're not going to form an armed revolt against you. That's historically using historical examples to justify that statement and rectify what's in there. If you tell people they're inferior, they'll be upset, but they're not going to lead to an armed revolt. Tell people they're equals and their failure is due to their own actions, their own choices, their own decisions, and their own way of thinking. You tell them that they suck not because of who they are, but because of what they do, and then you're likely to inspire rage. That's an incredible, deep, powerful statement. Let me put that into context. Now, I'm using this, by the way, I'm going to bring this up. Like, I am an immigrant twice, but I grew up, an immigrant, and I also grew up as an ethnic immigrant. So I'm not saying this because I'm like some, entitled, privileged white man. Like I'm certainly not from an entitled, privileged background, and I certainly don't identify as being whatever people call white, whatever that is, right? Um, so if I were to tell somebody based on this historical evidence, like if I were to tell somebody like, hey, like you're inferior because of your ethnicity, that would be an incredibly horrible thing to say. And according to history, as highlighted in this book, if I were to say that to somebody, they would rightfully be very, very upset. But historically, it would not be likely to inspire an armed revolution. Like that person would be upset, but they wouldn't be enraged. They would just be like hurt, obviously hurt, obviously unhappy about it. It would be a great injustice to tell somebody they're inferior because of whatever their race is. But historically, that did not lead to armed revolt, um, which this book makes actually a pretty clear argument about that. As nations sort of invaded other nations based on that premise, and quite frequently doing so to like passive, sort of pacifist pushback, like not a lot of revolt. However, if you tell people that they are equal to you, like their opportunities are equal, and they can get what you get, and the reason they're not getting what you get is because they're not their actions are wrong, and because their thinking is wrong, and because it's their personal choices that led to their current situation in which they are in. If you tell people that, you are, and I quote, much more likely to inspire rage. So why is this such an important line? Why is it so powerful? I'll tell you why. What this tells us is that people will fight harder to to be a victim than they will to self-improve in order to not be a victim. Because it says it right here that if you tell somebody they're inferior, they're just, hey, you're not doing as well because of you have this circumstance that makes you less than me. If you tell them that, they're going to be hurt. But if you tell them, hey, you could have everything that I have or that person has, if you make better personal choices and work on yourself, then that person gets angry at you. And that is how you start revolutions, armed revolutions. Of course, I mean, that's just crazy. So a great theme for this year to think about is because it is in our human nature to fight harder to cling to an excuse that holds us from what we are than it is to fight on improving ourselves to overcome that excuse. What a great theme would be for this year, for us to take ownership and to fight harder for improving ourselves and to be better than we fight for making a reason why we are where we are and why that's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay to suck. And it's against our human nature to take responsibility of our situation. It's because success is against human nature. So I want you to think about taking action and thinking and acting in a way that forces you to be better rather than justifying and spending any energy finding reasons why you're not. That's the message. Peace.